We are here with another email breakdown, and my guest today is Lucy Werner, which I'm very excited about, knowing Lucy for years. Lucy, could you introduce yourself and what you do?
Yeah, hello. Thank you for having me, Vicky. So my name is Lucy Werner, and on most social media platforms, I'm under as Lucy Werner PR. My background is unsurprisingly in PR. I used to work in-house in some of London's top agencies. I think you and I met when I was running my own boutique agency, and then 3 years ago, nearly four, I decided I was going to have a complete business pivot and take the title of the first book I wrote, which is called Hype Yourself, into more of a platform. And I run a paid newsletter subscription called The Hype. And on hypeyourself.com, I do resources, talks, workshops, and things to basically help self-employed folks get seen and get paid.
And that kind of leads us into the email that you've kind of chosen for us to kind of run through and break down together. Could you tell us a little bit about how you came to be on the email list and receive this email?
Yeah, so when I moved from Substack to Ghost, I was really on the lookout for people who were newsletter experts. And it's funny because you and I obviously spoke pre-recording. There's writing emails and then there's writing newsletters, and they're a very different thing. And I started to look at people who were basically experts in their field. So I was actually already subscribed to Dan, whose email this comes from, but he was doing a free newsletter growth blueprint course. I think it was going to be a set amount of emails over a set amount of time. The word free obviously got me. And I think because the way I consume media, I'm not a big video person. I'm not a big live call person. So getting emails in my inbox, like in an email course, short way, really appealed to me. So when I registered for this subsector of his email, this is the first one that I received. And actually, there was quite a few from the series that I almost put forward, but I really liked how meta and how simplistic this was as a first introductory email.
I love how you came to be about, you kind of talked about the hook and the free content that he was going to be providing, because I've been doing a lot of kind of reflection on, like, we all used to do that, like the freebie used to be the PDF, and like everybody would have a free resource PDF. And then I was doing some research, and the amount of people that actually download those and read those and then use them is so small. So actually I think it's clever, yeah, that he's done that almost as that hook, that it's a free, and again, very, like we were discussing, very meta. You get a free set of emails to learn about doing emails, I think is really clever and a really good kind of incentive to kind of get people subscribed.
Yeah, 100%. And for me, the whole series, he leads with the same image all the way through. And I think one of the things that we find the most difficult when we're doing an email or newsletter series is that we're scared of repeating ourselves. But it meant for me, it helped differentiate what was coming in my inbox. We always had this 5-week newsletter growth blueprint right at the top.
Yeah, and that's really, I think that is clever as well, because it also differentiates Dan's emails, because because I'm in the email world, I followed him for a long time too. And like he says in the email, he runs, I think it's the Inbox Collective, but yeah, he has his own emails and what he's doing here with the course with Beehive. So I guess then it differentiates between the different emails he might be sending as well, if you're subscribed
Yeah,
to his
totally.
wider stuff.
Yeah. And I think it's also quite bold with the graphic. I think so many of us just go for a little header image, or, this is actually quite chunky. Like if you do a quick like scroll up and down
Yeah.
of it, it's like half the email is actually that banner almost, which I think is quite bold.
Yeah, from coming from my kind of e-commerce view, I'm always very conscious of, oh, you need to have the headline up the top, you need to have a button up top, you need to go straight for the conversion. But actually, as we'll see kind of as we go through the copy, the point isn't to get people necessarily to buy anything or to click on a specific link. So you can be more bold with that head like kind of header image.
Yeah, definitely.
So if I scroll down a bit, we kind of then come into the main part of the email. And when he sent this to me, I have to confess, I was like, oh, it looks quite simple, but actually it's quite
There's a lot
clever.
going on.
Yeah, strategically, there's a lot. And I guess it's that kind of onboarding kind of strategy you have to have. You've got to tell people quite a lot of information up front.
Yeah, I guess for me, the bit that sort of really stuck out is obviously he's got the welcome and then he's straight into like, this is who I am, this is my one liner. Then he's gone into his credibility piece. And I do this thing when I teach people how to pitch to get onto podcasts or to get into press. I have this like ABCD method where you kind of start with like the attention, the benefits, the credentials. And so many people feel the need to over explain, like, oh, done this many clients, or I've worked with this person, or I've got this award, and actually, I love how simplistic it is with this. I run Inbox Collective, your go-to resource for all things newsletters. Like, we know exactly what he does and who it's for up front. Then he's just said it's since 2019. So he's already giving us, like, he's been doing it for over 5 years. And then he's talking about he's done big organizations and one person. So he's like kind of saying, like, I'm for everybody. And then he goes straight into like, this is what you're going to get. And I think so many people could turn that top paragraph into 5 paragraphs and you really lose the audience. And I think one of the things that I really like about Dan's emails is, for me, I don't have that huge attention. So I do like to whip through quite quickly. And I feel like he gives the credentials without veering into the bro marketing land. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, 100%. That was one of the things I've written down in my notes, because we'll come in like the bullet points in a minute, but it's also talking like, even with the banner, the word growth here is used quite a lot, which is such like that bro marketing, you need to grow your list, do this, do that. But actually the way he does it, it doesn't, yeah, exactly. It doesn't feel like that bro marketing push. It's quite an
No, there's no 7-figure businesses or hundreds of thousands, which I feel like sometimes those vanity metrics can actually be quite off-putting to people, because
100%.
you think, well, that's not where I'm at, so I'm not going to be able to do that. Whereas he set the base, there's no baseline that he's sort of setting. So then you're not getting that awe of like, oh, I need to be as big as Dan is, sort of thing, which I feel like sometimes for me, it's a real off-putter and I think sometimes it can be a bit American-led, where they're just putting wealth claims or like massive sort of like audience claims in. He doesn't even say how many people is on his list, and I'm sure it's substantial, but he doesn't need to put it in there to validate his expertise.
Yeah. I agree. And just to go back to you quickly as well, like I've been learning from you, and I've done the whole ABCD. And like you said, being able to communicate all of what you just said and have that confidence is what it looks simple here, but it isn't easy to do, to like pull it back to that kind of ABCD and kind of have all of that in just that short paragraph at the top. So yeah, really kind of clever copy. We come into the bullet points, which again is really well kind of set out for kind of that setting expectations for what you're going to receive.
Yeah, like in my membership, we actually had a lady called Kirsty Lewis, who is a workshop facilitator. And she always talks about like when you do a workshop or when you're facilitating, the brain actually feels really comfortable when we know what's coming. And so for me, this is actually a really good kind of online workshop newsletter version of it, where he's really preparing us for like, this is what you're going to get. And again, it would be so tempting for him here to kind of oversell it and be like, if you're feeling despair, I'm going to make you feel this. Or, if you're lost, I'm going to make you feel fat. He could have really gone in with the emotional hooks, but he's not. He's gone really practical of just like, you're going to get this. And so you feel safe that you're not going to get bombarded. We're going to learn a load of stuff. There's going to be some things that we need to implement. Yeah, I just think it's, again, it could look so simple, but I think there are so many tangents he could have taken it off.
Yeah, and actually, like you said, that is really reassuring because you're going to get 2 emails a week, which at first, when you've got to do the work, some work sounds like a lot. But he's also then, I'll space the emails out for a few days. So you're right, it immediately kind of calms you down a bit and kind of goes, okay, well, there's going to be some work involved. He then, the paragraph underneath, I think, is really great with the setting those expectations as well, because it's like, one thing you should know up front, I have no magic wand to wave, which again was kind of the opposite of that bro marketing. But also kind of reassuring though, because like actually what I'm going to get is quite practical rather than I've got to go out and do some crazy stunt type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think also with the whole, you're going to need make time every week to implement these strategies. I think, again, people quite often just want to consume and not take action. And
Yeah.
I think he's really setting the bar here of like, you're not going to be able to just read this and then
Yeah.
ta-da, like you actually are going to have to do it. And I think that's another thing that I probably don't stress enough in my own newsletter is that, you know, I do give prompts and templates, but ultimately it's down to the individual to build up that confidence to keep on hyping themselves. So for me, it was quite a good reminder really to remind people that, yes, I've got the tried and tested, but it's on you to do the work.
Yeah. Because then they'll see the results. Yeah. I wonder if also that's a good way to weed out people maybe that aren't your ideal reader because you're showing up with your expertise. You need people to that are there to put in the work to show up, I guess. And so if people read this and then it does sound like too much for them, or they're not ready for that commitment just yet, maybe this isn't for them.
Yeah. And then I think the plug to Beehive with the code,
Mhm.
for me, I think people can feel really anxious about putting that they're being sponsored or, you know, he's obviously being paid by Beehive to create this or they sponsored him in some way so that this course is free. And then in return, he's obviously like giving a discount for Beehive. And a lot of the techniques and tools that he mentions are actually Beehive specific. But for me, it's still not enough to it not be useful for me as somebody who's on Ghost. And I think whatever platform you're on, it's going to be helpful. Yes, there is a slight leaning edge to Beehive, but I think, again, because that's being set out up front, no one's going to read that and go, oh, well, it's only good if you're a Beehive person. I think like it's great if you're a Beehive person. It's good if you're not a Beehive person. And I just think it's a really natural plug and upfront sort of, you know, partnership declaration that more people should be doing as well. And I think people often think that to work with big brands, you have to be a huge creator. I mean, Dan's not small, but I think it just really goes to show if you're a niche in your field, you can attract the, you know, the brands and the businesses that want to collaborate with you because you're going to be able to speak to their audience in a more natural way.
Yeah, I guess it's something to aspire to as well, isn't it? It's like Dan walks the walk. He uses all these tips and you know the things he's learned to build his own list. So he's then acquired this partnership with Beehive. So if he can do it, then absolutely you can because you're going to learn what he's he's learned and he's teaching. But yeah, I agree, completely transparent, and it's throughout as well. So it's in the kind of the logo. He mentions it straight up that it's possible because of them, and also I think he's even put it in the footer at the bottom that obviously he works with
Well,
affiliates.
but also as well, I mean, because you're going to recognize the design of that footer.
Yeah.
There's someone else he's working with to put this course together, no?
Yeah, it does look. I did wonder when I saw it. It is very Mailchimpy. Yeah.
It is Mailchimp,
Yeah.
and I only noticed it when I saved the emails and I was clicking on the landing pages of them that actually it is from a Mailchimp course. So I don't know if there's a conflict of interest here.
But you'd be surprised actually how many people do it. And I guess unless he is contract. And actually, to be fair to Dan, I have seen him talk about and work with Mailchimp on several occasions. So I guess it's,
Yeah. But
he
I think
might
in this
be,
system, it's probably easier to use. I think when you're doing like a course like this, the segmentation and the scheduling in Mailchimp is going to be better than what anybody who's on like Button Down or Substack or Beehive or Ghost is going to tell you it's not got the same email functionalities that Mailchimp has.
yeah. And yeah, might be using a combination of things or using them for different things. He might use it for another newsletter. And like most of us play with a lot of these, email service providers anyway. So I guess, you having to move to Substack then away from Substack, you've done a lot of research into kind of all the different platforms that are out there. So yeah, absolutely. But yeah, you're right. The footer is but it shows you as well that you don't necessarily have to put in a load of different formatting. What is in there is, you know, absolutely kind of fine. When you and I recognize it from using it a lot, but
Yeah.
yeah, it
Yeah.
shows. Yeah, you don't need to
Because
necessarily.
we're geeks, Vicky.
Absolutely. And then at the end of the email, he's kind of signing off with tomorrow you'll get some more kind of, yeah, tomorrow we kick off some more of that, what's coming. And like you said, that safety of knowing what's coming up with then kind of a few things to think on before the course starts. So a little bit of homework.
Yeah, and actually, if you click through and you go onto the guide, it's suddenly like so much in-depth information. I think it's really well done, and as the course comes through, the links in there are like gold because he's collected so many different examples, and I think it's really nice to see him shouting out other creators, and it's also really nice to just not see the same massive successful companies always being shown. Like for me, when somebody talks about like a quote or a famous entrepreneur or something, it kind of makes me roll my eyes, and I'm like, no, I want to hear like what you've learned that's like really interesting. It's kind of why I always like to partner with the geeks in their niche. It's why, like I always wanted to do stuff with you. It's like we're not necessarily the people with hundreds of thousands of followers, but we really, really know our stuff in a very like niche topic area. And I think those people are a lot more interesting. And if we kind of want to counter this sort of like billionaire corporate land as small business creators, it's like we need to be making sure that we invest our time and support the indie creators.
Yeah, and I think that's why I'm so intrigued by the newsletter world and the sponsorship side and getting sponsors and working with people like Beehive or whoever it is, because to create resources like Dan has, as people like as you and I know, creating those kind of resources, it takes so much time, like, and yeah, and kind of putting all those together. Yes, you can absolutely do it by yourself, but if you have like people that will sponsor or help, kind of, or building and I guess that's why you have to monetize a lot of these, because when you're doing something that has all of that information, all that value, and all of that, it's a lot of work to be providing that all the time. I imagine a lot of the kind of, yeah, the kind of, and from what you provide for your paid subscribers, but the lists and things you do must take hours to create.
Yeah. And I
Mm.
think, there is this whole thing of, oh, but I could just go and ask Google. I can just go and ask on AI. And it's like, yeah, you can. But
Yeah,
I want to know what an expert thinks. I want to know what an expert thinks is a good one, not just, the popular choice. And I want to know how I can apply it for myself, not just this is good. Like, this is good and why. Here's
yeah,
it broken down. Here's the ingredients.
yeah. And like you say, if you go to Google or chat or any of them and you ask a question, you're going to get, like you said, those examples of the big, like the same generic examples or answers again and again. We're actually trying to do all these things is quite nuanced, and you need those real life examples or to be able to see people where you around you where you are.
Yeah.
Fab. And then so yeah, he's got quite a simple sign off. And I actually think this is quite clever as well, this kind of say hi via email or LinkedIn, because it's getting people to click, but it's also as that kind of welcome onboarding, getting people, especially if they reply via email, that kind of helps with the deliverability and things like that. So kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
getting that
Although I
kind
have
of
to say,
highlight.
I emailed him twice. Once because I actually implemented one of his emails, and I tried to connect with him on LinkedIn, and so far I've had no response. So I don't know if I'm
No,
blacklisted.
you've got into a spam. Oh no,
I
that's
got
a
into
shame.
his junk.
Yeah. I wonder if he just gets so many, but yeah, I love it when people hit reply to my emails because it's
Yeah, me
almost
too.
because it's validation that people are reading and consuming and stuff, but it's almost like then you can learn a little bit more about okay what people really like respond to, and like you said, you implemented something that's really good information for him in okay that tip resonated and that tip's worked, and even use you as like a case study. So that would be really valuable when he gets your email and he does read it and reply.
I mean, obviously that's what I was pitching for. Add me to the next one.
And then, like I say, the footer quite basic, quite Mailchimpy, but it's got a few extra bits in here, like his AI, how he uses AI, how he works with
Yeah.
affiliate. Um, I'm quite intrigued. That was one thing I did kind of question because, like I say, I do a lot of e-commerce, so footers are usually like follow us on social media. They're quite basic. Is it becoming quite common and to that in kind of newslettery world? I guess are you having to be a bit more transparent, like having things like this about affiliates and things like that, or is it just that's something he's felt he needs to do?
I think, it's different in different countries. So, you know, I think and it's really like not clear across the board, like what you should and shouldn't declare. But for me, I'm never going to put a clickable link in where I could make some money without not declaring. I tend to say it. I mean, I'm not doing email courses like this, but if I have got an affiliate link, I will declare this is an affiliate link. I think most people are quite savvy to what an affiliate link is now, but not always. So, I do sort of have to say what it is. I also think it's also about being really mindful, like what you're sharing and making sure that, yes, okay, you might think it's cool now, but in 3 or 6 months or a year down the line, are you still going to be recommending that product? So I do think there's actually a lot more that people need to be thinking about when it comes to like promoting other brands and tools and services, particularly like if it goes wrong. Not speaking about anyone in particular. Just had the thought that randomly popped into my head. If it goes wrong and you've brought somebody onto a platform with you, then how you reconcile with that afterwards.
Yeah.
And also not burning your bridges. Like obviously you and I met because we were both Mailchimp partners. And then when I moved from Mailchimp, my only thing really was it was too expensive when I wasn't using it. But it wasn't, I had no critique of the software. It was just at that point, I wasn't selling anything. I was just sending out my weekly newsletter and wanting to get people to pay to read content. So it didn't fit that. But, I still want the door open to work with them maybe again in the future if something fits. Maybe further down the line, I'll be doing a inbox course, and
Yeah.
Mailchimp would be a better partner than Ghost on that because of the segmentation
Yeah.
and the analytics. So, I do think there is a case of being careful who you align yourself with, and that is actually part of hyping yourself as well. But yeah, on the AI thing as well, I think I'm increasingly seeing, we all do actually have a legal need to declare how we're using AI. And so, I think a lot of us don't even necessarily think about our terms of service or, things like that on our websites, particularly people who are just selling online things. It's kind of the last thing that they think about. So he's definitely checking all the legal boxes here in a way that doesn't read too scary.
Yeah. And I wonder if, as like I say, the evolution of newsletters and things, whether we will see, because obviously there are some things in footage you have to do legally, address and unsubscribe link, but whether we will see stricter, yeah, kind of regulations, like you say, around those. The other question I had really was, obviously I don't know Dan personally, but the kind of the tone in here is quite what I would expect from him, quite calm, straightforward, that kind of thing. And I'd love to ask you about kind of, with your experience of hyping yourself and things like that, about bringing personality and things into newsletters, and how, not necessarily how we do it, but how important it is to kind of get that mix of teaching information, but also bringing in your brand.
Yeah. It's funny actually. Lex, who I'm doing a newsletter bundle with next week, was creating some image assets for us. And there were lots of kind of mock ups that were they were very funny and very silly. And it actually reminded me that, like, back in the day when I launched my books, I would always do these like stupid mock ups. And part of, one of my brand values is fun and trying to make it fun. And it made me realize that historically I relied on kind of like the colors to bring in a lot of fun, but because I've had a bit of a rebrand to soften it a little bit, because I'm like, I don't feel as London zany as I used to. um I was like, oh yeah, I need to make sure I'm still bringing in like the elements of who I am. And when I read something that I've written, I always have to think to myself, okay, if I was another PR small business expert, or if I was another independent newsletter creator for self-employed people, could they write this? And have I made myself differentiate? So I used to think talking about living in France was a negative, for example, because I thought, oh, I've built this audience in the UK. If I'm not in the UK, I'm not going to get UK work. And actually, the opposite kind of happened, that once I started talking about being in France, these opportunities to collaborate here or do events where I am, or other people who are moving abroad, were suddenly drawn to me. So I think, we can quite often hide that we're a parent juggling children, or maybe we're going through a divorce, or maybe we've just had an illness, or maybe somebody close in our family's had an illness, and we don't necessarily want to talk about all of those things in depth or show photos of it or things like that. But when we do talk about those things, it does help our people to connect with us and differentiate ourselves from everybody else. And I think in the world of AI, it's going to be even more important to just show a glimpse. It doesn't have to be everything. And I definitely like set guardrails of what I will and won't talk about. But I do think it's really important. I mean, if I was going to give one critique, I would, if you're new to Dan, there's not a photo of him in there. And I kind of think he's probably got space to shove a little headshot on the 5-week newsletter growth
Yeah.
blueprint. Because he's saying presented by Beehive, but for me, I would definitely have a like, with Dan, and have his headshot on there.
Yeah. Have his little face peeking out there. Yeah.
Yeah, just a little one. It could literally be peeking.
Yeah. I love that. And I love what you were just saying, because one of the things I always quote you on is you say, obviously it's not about showing everything and putting, your whole life into kind of your brand or your newsletters. But the thing that you always say is it's about showing a little bit of ankle. And I always quote you on that, because I'm like, that always sticks with me when I'm like, either when I'm writing something and I read it and I'm like, well, I'm not putting enough of myself in this, or I read something and I feel like I'm putting too much in, but then I'm like,
Yeah.
actually, I need to have something in there. Otherwise, you do, yeah, you sound like the AI, you sound like everybody else in your kind of world. So I always, yeah, take that with me when I'm kind of doing my own content. Anything else on this email we haven't kind of covered that you wanted to talk about?
No, I think just actually linking through to other stuff is something that we don't always do. Like, actually, the links that he gives are really long blog posts, and they're epic. And I think, we shouldn't be afraid to be like, if you want more information, it's here, and then you can drown them with information. But yeah, I just think in general we can make our email shorter.
Yeah,
You know.
I think that's really good. Kind of advice, keeping it shorter. And I guess also that's why you build beautiful platforms like you have on Ghost, because then you can kind of get the shorter emails and then kind of get people through to where it's a nice experience to maybe read it rather than in the inbox as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I currently think mine looks better in the inbox than it does on the website, but that's a problem for another day.
It all takes time, so much time. Fab. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Lucy. I would love it if you could share where people can find you and sign up for your newsletter and things like that.
Yeah. So if you head to hypeyourself.com, you will see I've implemented some of Dan's stuff. So there's a nice big landing strip at the top that's going to direct you to my newsletter. And then I'm mainly on Instagram and LinkedIn as Lucy Werner PR.
Amazing. Thank you ever so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.